There are people whose lives become so vast and so unhinged, a soul made of Tupperware that has been warped in the dishwasher simply cannot contain them. In this video, we will be exploring the story of an individual who quite literally preyed on the generosity of her following, faking illnesses to the extreme. So my friends and frenemies alike, let's talk about some TikTokers who did terrible things, episode 23. Madison Russo, otherwise known on TikTok as Maddie Russo. Creator class type, pity me. Specialty, Munchausen. Claim to fame, dare I say, downright scam artist. Well, back in early 2022, there was this seemingly heartbreaking story of a girl named Maddie, a 19-year-old college student who had currently been attending classes at St. Ambrose College, located in Iowa. It was around this time she began posting about her battle with the following 3 illnesses. 1. Leukemia. 2. Stage 2 pancreatic cancer. And lastly, a tumor the size of a football that had wrapped itself around her spine and thus was not able to be removed. But don't just take it from me, she would essentially double down on these claims in a 2-minute long video over on TikTok.
So, when my older brother Tyler turned 18 years old, he was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, which is a chronic autoimmune disease where the pancreas no longer produces insulin on its own. With this being said, I was also tested to see if I would develop type 1 diabetes and see if I was positive for any of the antibodies. So when the test came back, I ended up being positive for all 5 out of 5 antibodies. And in February of 2020, I was also diagnosed with type 1 at 17 years old. Fast forward to February of 2022, I had yearly lab work done just with my primary care provider as a standard checkup. And aside from starting to feel just a little bit off, my lab work came back and my white blood cell counts were not in normal range. So further testing was then done. And on February 10th of 2022, quite possibly the worst day of my life occurred. I got the call from my oncologist and they found a mass on my pancreas and I had stage 2 pancreatic cancer at just 19 years old. Scared is an understatement. I was terrified and I definitely still am. But I'm really glad I went to my yearly health check because it would have been so easy to just skip it and say I'm fine. So please take my experience and get regular lab work done because the sooner you catch anything that is wrong, the better chance of outcome and survival you would have. And it really could save your life like it did mine. So after finding out, I started treatment right away, consisting of oral chemo and radiation. So far, I have completed 8 rounds of chemo and over 50 rounds of radiation. And then at my 3-month scan, I was informed that the tumor on my pancreas was shrinking and it was responding to treatment. However, it's also spread to my blood and is acute lymphoblastic leukemia. There is a mental health crisis in America right now, and I want to touch on the impact that cancer and chronic disease patients can go through. When your life changes in an instant, and many days are spent vomiting, in pain, and being restricted with what you can do, your mind also becomes sick.
Now, to make matters even worse, Madison went on to say doctors had given her an 11% chance of making it through the next 5 years. Well, needless to say, Madison's story went absolutely viral, racking up millions upon millions of views, even being touched on by the mainstream media. And well, what do you know? At this point, every single one of her videos begins talking about her day-to-day struggles with these illnesses. For example, posting videos related to the difficulties of her chemo treatments, as well as balancing out her school and work life, talking about how worn down she had been, yet felt it was important to continue moving forward as best she could. Now, what's more is, for the most part, she had done this with an absolute smile on her face, portraying this very much I'm gonna beat this type of attitude and you can too. Well, this in turn would draw many individuals who actually had these conditions to her account, becoming sort of an inspiration to them. And eventually, she begins taking on several interviews with various organizations stating the following. I remember getting the news. I remember hanging up the phone and I was an absolute mess. I was literally bawling, but somehow I ended up getting the courage to wipe away my tears and went back to class, which, now when I think about it, was actually pretty crazy. Over on Facebook, Maddie began posting these sort of long drawn-out inspirational snippets telling those suffering from these illnesses that they were not alone, that we can all work through our conditions together. Moreover, Madison's mother will begin updating people on her own Facebook as to how things were going for her daughter, informing people of her chart readings, Maddie's various forms of treatment, and how she had started a new clinical trial that would hopefully drastically improve her condition. In a later interview, Maddie would say, "Life has been pretty crazy. It's a catch-22. I can't win for losing, and I feel like I've been rocked to my soul, and right now everything is kind of uncertain. I just want to know my game plan, and right now I don't know what that is." In addition to this, Maddie went on to state that she had been maintaining a 4.0 GPA, had a part-time job, was golfing in her free time, all the while going through her chemo and radiation treatments. Maddie would also use these interviews along with her socials, i.e. TikTok and her Facebook, to essentially promote a GoFundMe, the objective of which was to help cover current medical costs as well as the cost of her future treatments. And over the course of the next few months, Madison raised roughly $38,000. But one thing Maddie didn't really seem to understand was the more attention she brought to all of these accounts, more and more medical professionals would lay eyes on them, as well as individuals who were actually suffering from these illnesses at that current point in time. And one of the first things people began pointing out was the fact that she had been going through chemotherapy as well as radiation treatments for quite a while, yet her appearance didn't really seem to correlate. A lot of people began questioning why she still had her hair. But let's be clear, there's a few pieces of basic information about this subject we should all understand before moving forward. Chemotherapy is a treatment that uses drugs to stop the growth of cancer cells, either by killing cells or by stopping them from dividing. However, many forms of chemo also target healthier cells within the body, leading to things like a weaker immune system, in turn making patients more susceptible to things like infections. And yes, hair loss can also be attributed to these treatments. But there are in fact certain medications or forms of treatment that don't always cause patients to lose their hair. As a matter of fact, for many, this doesn't occur unless a more aggressive form of treatment becomes necessary, for example, combining certain chemotherapy drugs with radiation treatments. Now, the reason I felt like it was important to understand this is because a lot of those comments in regards to her hair could somewhat be explained, but it was the following series of photographs that truly led to her well-deserved downfall. In accordance with the picture shown on screen now, actual cancer patients and medical professionals alike were quick to point out this picture was a load of crap. For one, her feeding tube, so to speak, had barely been inserted into her nose, shown by that little bit of purple that you can see just under her nose right there. But more so, the port was just a bunch of straight up jumbled up tube endings completely held together with regular Scotch tape. Another photo depicting Maddie's hair loss, i.e. a clump of hair in the sink shown here, had obviously been cut out with scissors, and it really doesn't take a rocket scientist to see what I mean. In addition to this, Maddie would post a few photos on her Facebook as well as her TikTok that when reverse image searched would come back to various actual cancer patients, one of which wasn't even taken in the United States, none of which were actually taken in the treatment center that she had allegedly been going to. It was at this point medical professionals began contacting her local police department, informing them of every single one of the aforementioned discrepancies. Now, one of the first things investigators would do was call that specific medical center in which Maddie had claimed to be receiving her treatments, asking them if they currently had any patients with the following three conditions. 1. Acute lymphoblastic leukemia. 2. Stage 2 pancreatic cancer, which is usually a death sentence in and of itself for reasons we're not going to get into here, and a tumor, to which they responded not a single person ever had. Investigators then went on to subpoena Maddie's medical records, to which, surprise, surprise, Madison had a completely clean bill of health. Well, on January 23rd of 2023, Russo was arrested for theft by means of deception, along with being held on a $10,000 bond. she had swindled almost $40,000 from over 400 individuals. And upon searching her residence, they would confiscate the following items: a 2023 Kia Sportage, a brown paper bag containing medical supplies, an IV pole, a feeding pump, a couple of rolls of medical bandages, cash, financial documents, and lastly, nausea medication that was not even made out to her name. Now it's worth pointing out, that very same day, the man who set up her GoFundMe ended up bailing her out. On top of that, there are a lot of people out there who firmly believe that Madison's mother was in on it the entire time. And that to me is one of those things that would just make this case 10 times more crazy than it already is. Like, was Madison truly that good of a mass manipulator to those in her inner circle? And one final thing before we end this video. Just last month, March 2023, Madison pled not guilty to the charge of theft in the first degree. So that's it, y'all. That is going to do it for this episode. If you think of anything I've missed, feel free to leave it in the comments section below. As always, I sincerely hope you have an amazing whatever it is, wherever you may be.